Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Chairman, what a pleasure it is for me to be here today and to see so many folks committed not only to the natural environment but also, I hope, to tourism. I know tourism is an intervention into this conference here today, and I hope to be able to outline some of the national thinking and why I think the accord that we have just signed is hugely important, not only to tourism in this country but also to the future of natural environments. It is a real pleasure, and I can see some familiar faces in the audience today, and I think that is committed to the fact that Visit England, the National Tourist Board, is committed to working nationally but also locally for the benefit of tourism. Let me just take you through a few slides, if I may, in the briefest possible time. Why are we in tourism? Well, tourism is worth £97 billion per annum to the economy. It provides 2 million jobs year, and it's projected to grow. It is one of the few industries in this country that is projected to grow. And it will grow, we believe, to £158 billion of value by the year 2020. And importantly for me, and importantly for you here in the room, I suggest, it benefits every part of the country. It's not perhaps just some of the well-known hotspots of, say, London, York, or Bath. It does benefit even the most remote of communities in this country. So, rural tourism. It is clearly one of our greatest strengths in our tourism arm. Exploring the countryside remains one of the most popular pastimes of both domestic and international visitors in England. And I feel that there is unrealised potential for sustainable, sensible growth of tourism. AONBs are a vital part of England's rural story and our rural economy. And I wish I had a magic at this. Okay, so why is it so important? Well, quite clearly it creates employment in the countryside. It provides the ability to supplement other incomes and supports the economic viability of many communities. And whilst some areas are overpopulated by tourism, if managed sensibly and properly, tourism can certainly reinvest into the protection and preservation and the enhancement of the natural environment, both for the businesses themselves, for visitors and for locals. So what of our role as the National Tourist Board? Well, we're a fairly small organisation. There are 64 people that work for my organisation, and we exist on a budget of around about £7.5 million per annum. My friends north of the border in Scotland exist on a budget of about £60 million per annum. Now, I'm really not complaining about that, because that's how life is. And our role as the National Tourist Board is to make the fairly modest monies we have go further by working in partnership. And clearly, one of my roles as the National Tourist Board is to identify groups, associations, and sections of the industry that we can work together to make the money that we have go further. Clearly, part of my role is about promoting England's offer, encouraging we Brits to stay at home, and equally encouraging international visitors to enjoy this country. We provide the national statistics for tourism, and that's really very important. When I first came to this job 4 years ago, my budget was cut by 36%, and one of the things I held on to at all costs was our research capability, and I'll be able to illuminate a little later why I think that's so important. But, I don't have a case to make, and tourism does not have a case to make unless we can prove to Treasury and others why it is valuable to support this element of the economy. And I'm privileged enough in the current spending round to have not experienced any cut whatsoever. And that is in no small part down to the energy of my minister, my tourism minister, Hugh Robertson, but also the fact that we were able to make the case economically for tourism. And clearly, part of my role is advising government on the factors that influence tourism and why we should be taking certain policies to support tourism. So, this is our shared ambition. I described the fact that we're a fairly small organisation, but there is a national tourism framework, a national tourism strategy. And the ambition of that strategy is to grow tourism by 5% year on year for the next 10 years, well, until 2020 as it now happens. And it is the partnership for everybody in tourism. It's not just my strategy. So we have a number of action plans that outline the activity we need to get to deliver that 5% year-on-year growth. And partners are DEFRA, are AMBs, are the national parks. And so the signing of today's accord is just a great step forward in showing that actually we have a shared vision for tourism in this country. And the rural and wise growth or sustainable elements of my tourism strategy, England's tourism strategy, are pivotal to ensuring that rural economies have a sound and economic future. So, how was last year? Every good presentation needs a slide that you really can't read. And here it is, ladies and gentlemen, a slide you cannot read. But what this shows is actually tourism last year was relatively flat. There were some small gains in business tourism. Domestic holiday tourism stayed fairly flat. Visiting friends and relatives, which is a serious element of our tourism economy, showed some growth. But overall, it was flat. That said, there were market differences up and down the country. So last year, I'm hearing a lot about deserts and water and so forth, and I should just get out the weather thing here now. I'll confess. Last year, the weather had a detrimental effect on certain parts of the tourism sector, particularly countryside, small towns, and seaside resorts. Actually, the weather, with the incessant rain, wasn't that kind to those areas that were weather dependent. And urban areas did quite well out of tourism. And so one of my objectives for my chairman this year was to make sure the weather was fine.
Thank you.
And I think I'm doing quite a good job of that. Ladies and gentlemen, I will take all the credit I can for that. But actually, when the Met Office and various others come out with their dire warnings of this, that, and the other terrible weather, and we should all stay indoors because we're going to freeze, flood, or fry, I always say, actually, the weather is what makes this country. There is no such thing as bad weather. There's only such thing as bad clothing. And our countryside in particular is shaped, yes, of course, by man, by agriculture, but it's shaped by our weather, and that's what makes us such a delightful visiting experience. You said, you've heard I said that before, haven't you? And again, and again, and again, please, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again. Thank you. So this is just another slide that shows that actually last year was fairly static in terms of tourism, but most importantly, the underlying principle is that tourism is in growth. My aspiration, the strategic framework's aspiration, is to grow by 5% year on year. Actually, since 2010, tourism has been growing faster than that. It's been growing at 8.4%, 8.7% year on year, which is very, very important. And actually, the growth in employment is outstripping the national average in the growth of employment. So I would say, despite the ups and downs of poor weather, sometimes other elements of the economy, tourism is in robust health. But we have to keep it that way, because tourism is a massively competitive industry. Everybody wants to take weekends abroad. When times are hard, when money is tight, the first thing that tends to go is your disposable income. And leisure visits are in that bracket, disposable income. So we remain in a hugely competitive world. Can I just get to the next slide? And I talked earlier on about why it's so important for us to keep research. We do a lot of research, not just numbers, and not just where people come from, or how they find out about us, or how long they stay, or how much they spend when they're here. We do a lot of attitudinal research. And we know what people like and don't like. Most recently, we've been doing some customer satisfaction research around destinations. Now, I'm not a researcher, so please don't ask me to explain the maths behind this. But based on a number of factors, people who've actually visited these destinations behind me, the average good score based on a number of factors for a destination is 92. Now that's not out of 100, it ranges from about 70 up to about 130. It's made up of a number of factors, but the average good score is 92. And if you look on here at some of the destinations, not surprisingly, most of the high scores are in countryside destinations. So countryside and countryside destinations are doing something right. Anybody here from Birmingham? No. Well, I think if I was Birmingham, I'd be a bit depressed about that thing. And actually, it's fascinating stuff. And at a later stage, if you do decide to look at sustainable tourism as a topic for your conference, I'd be delighted to take you behind all of these messages, because there is a whole wealth of reasons as to why people do or do not like certain things. Can I go to the next slide? There are just some of the reasons. Countryside comes out well. If you take an aggregate score of countryside, it comes out around about 96, so it's 4 points better than the average good if you take an aggregate score. And some of the reasons for that are it's a safe place, welcoming and friendly people, quality of accommodation. Actually, the countryside in this country is seen as a quality visit, which is an excellent standpoint for us to build in the future. Next slide. There are some downsides, and if you look at the bottom of the list, actually, countryside experiences do considerably worse in terms of access. Now, maybe that's pretty obvious, isn't it? But public transport, both to and within countryside destinations, is seen as a barrier to enjoyment. And clearly, that is something we all have an interest in. Why is it that those people who will not be persuaded to use public transport? Is it because the transport is not there, or they're not used to it? Do we have a better promotional job to do, etc., etc.? But the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, public transport is seen as a barrier to growing countryside tourism. I mean, the next slide, please. So, a little bit about the landscape as a whole. We now exist in a world where there is a national body, and there are a number of around 200 destination management organisations. We used to have regionalism in this country, we no longer have regionalism in this country. There are destination management organisations. So there are organisations in Suffolk, for example, Norfolk, Visit Yorkshire. There are organisations primarily based around individual destinations, Bath, Bristol, Leeds, and so on and so forth. And my role is working very closely with those destinations. And I think that's where there is a lot of relevance to your work, because the success of a tourist destination, the success of a tourist experience is based on joined up working at a local level. It is about transport, it is about marketing, it is about good accommodation, it is about good pubs, it is about good restaurants, it's about good infrastructure, it's about good interpretation, it's about the visit. And when one talks about that, the visitor economy in its broadest sense, it's vitally important that we create a number of distinctive quality experiences at a local level. There is new interest in tourism, there is no doubt about it. There's perhaps not new money, but there's new interest in tourism. And the LEPs themselves, the local enterprise partnerships, with their single pot and their influence on European funding, are going to be powerful and can be powerful advocates of tourism at the local level. Each LEP has tourism, or the majority of LEPs have tourism as a priority in their growth programs, and we work very closely with LEPs. And working closely with LEPs on the ground to realise the countryside tourism experience, I believe, is a very fertile area for us to explore in future. Next slide, please. So collaboration is the key for success. We've already signed our partnership agreement with the National Parks. I'm delighted to say the Minister and my Chairman, Lady Cobham, signed a partnership agreement up in Yorkshire last week. I was delighted to sign the accord here today. And I think that states an intent that we want to work nationally so that tourism benefits and grows from a sustainable position locally. Next slide, please. The accord is a welcome step forward. And as far as I'm concerned, our primary focus for signing such an accord is that we help create and develop great experiences for visitors. We want increased economic growth for the communities that host those visitors. We want the communities to benefit from tourism in a sustained and sensible way. And most importantly, I want to recognise the value of historic, protected landscapes and actually to shine the light on them at a national level. I believe our countryside, I believe the countryside contained within our AONBs in particular, have not had the profile that they deserve. This is a great step. I am absolutely delighted to sign this accord with you here today, ladies and gentlemen. I promise you, my organisation will continue to support rural tourism, countryside tourism, and the work of the AONBs. Thank you very much for your time.